Welcome back, Darwin Award enthusiasts. You know the drill by now. We're on part 4, which means humanity's creativity in self-elimination shows no signs of slowing down. Today's collection is particularly special because it includes stories so bizarre that if I told you they were from a dark comedy movie, you'd say that's too unrealistic. We've got methane buildup gone wrong, a cactus with a vengeance, parkour that went splat, highway selfies meeting physics, and someone who mixed gasoline with cigarettes like it was a cocktail recipe. Strap in, because these stories prove that Mother Nature, concrete, and basic chemistry all have a sense of irony. Let's get into it. Story number 1. The Methane Chamber. Our first story from Newark, New Jersey, 1990 is genuinely one of the most bizarre ways someone's own body has ever worked against them. And yes, this is going exactly where you think it's going. Meet Robert, a guy living alone in a small apartment with essentially zero ventilation. We're talking one of those places where the windows haven't been opened since the Carter administration. No air circulation, basically a sealed box. Now, Robert also had what we'll politely call digestive issues. His diet consisted primarily of beans, cabbage, cheap beer, and other foods that are basically fuel for the human gas production factory. You know where this is heading. For those who don't know, the human digestive system produces methane gas. It's flammable, it's lighter than air, and in small amounts in open spaces, it harmlessly dissipates. Key words there: small amounts and open spaces. Robert's apartment was neither small amounts nor open space. It was a methane accumulation chamber. Over the course of several days, Robert apparently never opened a window, never left his apartment, and continued his bean-heavy diet. Methane gas began accumulating in his sealed apartment. We're talking about a gradual buildup of flammable gas in an enclosed space. The medical examiner's report, and I'm not making this up, indicated that Robert essentially created his own gas chamber. The methane concentration in his apartment reached levels that displaced enough oxygen to cause asphyxiation. He was found by his landlord several days later when neighbors complained about the smell. The apartment had to be professionally ventilated before investigators could even enter safely. The methane levels were measured and found to be genuinely dangerous, not just unpleasant but actually hazardous. The coroner's report cited asphyxiation due to methane gas buildup in enclosed space. The source of the methane? Well, let's just say the investigation was particularly undignified. Ventilation is not optional. Your body produces gases that need to go somewhere. If you're living in a sealed environment with poor air circulation, you're creating a potential hazard. Also, maybe balance your diet. Beans are great, but variety exists for a reason. Open your windows. Let fresh air in. Your body produces waste gases for a reason. They need to leave. Story number 2. The Cactus Strikes Back. Moving to Tucson, Arizona, 1998 for a story that proves nature has a sense of poetic justice. Meet David, a guy with fireworks, a bad attitude, and zero respect for desert wildlife. David and his buddies were out in the Arizona desert, drinking and blowing stuff up because apparently that's entertainment. They come across a massive saguaro cactus. You know, those iconic tall cacti with the arms that you see in every Western movie? These cacti are protected by law in Arizona. They can live for 200 years and weigh several tons. They're also, as David was about to discover, capable of revenge. David decides it would be hilarious to throw a powerful M80 firecracker at the base of this cactus. For those unfamiliar, M80s are essentially small explosive devices. They're illegal in most places for a reason. He lights it, throws it at the cactus base, and runs back to watch the show. The firecracker explodes right at the base of the cactus. And here's where physics enters the chat. A 20-foot-tall saguaro cactus weighing approximately 4,800 pounds doesn't just stand there when you blow out its support structure. The cactus begins to fall, and wouldn't you know it, David is standing exactly in its fall path. His friends started yelling, but a multi-ton cactus doesn't fall slowly. David tried to run, but he was drunk, the sand was loose, and physics wasn't giving him any grace period. The cactus came down right on top of him. The impact was immediate and catastrophic. Those spines aren't just for show, they're up to 3 inches long and needle sharp. But the real problem was the several tons of cactus crushing him. His friends tried to lift the cactus off him, but you can't just move a saguaro. It took emergency responders with heavy equipment over an hour to remove enough of the cactus to reach David. The Arizona authorities were not sympathetic. Not only had David destroyed a protected plant species, but the manner of his exit was described by one ranger as the most elaborate case of nature's revenge I've ever seen. The saguaro, by the way, didn't survive either. A 200-year-old cactus that had survived droughts, storms, and climate change was taken out by one idiot with an M80. Don't blow up nature. Especially don't blow up several-ton objects while standing in their potential fall zone. Also, saguaro cacti are protected for a reason. They're ancient, they're important to the ecosystem, and apparently they don't take kindly to being exploded. Respect nature, or nature will disrespect you right back. Story number 3. The Parkour Plummet. Heading to Boston, Massachusetts, 2002. This is a story about Mark, a 22-year-old who watched way too many action movies and vastly overestimated his own abilities. Mark was really into parkour. You know, that sport where people run up walls, jump between buildings, and generally treat urban environments like obstacle courses. When done properly with training and safety measures, it's actually pretty impressive. Mark had been practicing parkour for about 6 months. 6 months! That's like saying you've been playing piano for 6 months, so you're ready for Carnegie Hall. Mark and his friends were at a multi-story car park in downtown Boston. He'd successfully made several smaller jumps, maybe 6 to 8 feet across, 1 story up. He was feeling confident. Too confident. That's when he spotted 2 car parks separated by about a 12-foot gap. Both were about 40 feet up, roughly 4 stories. Professional parkour athletes might attempt this with proper training, safety equipment, and multiple practice runs. Mark decided to just go for it. His friends tried to talk him out of it. "Dude, that's too far." "Mark, don't be stupid. Let's just go get pizza." Mark, riding high on adrenaline and overconfidence, backed up to get a running start. His plan was to sprint and jump the gap between the buildings. Here's some physics for you. To clear a 12-foot gap at 40 feet elevation, you need to be moving at approximately 15 to 17 miles per hour at takeoff and achieve proper trajectory. Professional long jumpers train for years to nail these calculations instinctively. Mark sprinted toward the edge and launched himself into the air. He didn't make it. Not even close. He cleared maybe 8 feet before gravity remembered it had a job to do. He hit the side of the opposite building about halfway up, scrambled briefly, and then fell 40 feet to the concrete below. His friends called 911 immediately, but the impact from that height onto concrete meant there was nothing paramedics could do. The impact was simply too severe. The really tragic part, Mark had actually been pretty good at ground-level parkour. He had potential, but he skipped about 5 years of training and went straight to the advanced level that should have been a decade away. One of the responding officers later said, "This wasn't parkour. This was just jumping off a building with extra steps." Confidence without competence is just arrogance with consequences. 6 months of practice doesn't make you a professional. Parkour is a legitimate sport with professional training methods for a reason. You don't skip the fundamentals and jump straight to the finale. Also, if multiple friends are telling you something is a bad idea, maybe listen. They're not trying to ruin your fun, they're trying to keep you alive. Story number 4, The Highway Selfie. Las Vegas, Nevada, 2017. This next one is a perfect example of social media making people do increasingly stupid things for likes and shares. Meet James, a 25-year-old British tourist visiting Vegas for the first time. James had seen photos of Germany's Autobahn, specifically those iconic shots taken from the median showing cars zooming past on both sides. James thought this would make a great Instagram post. The problem? He wasn't in Germany. He was in Las Vegas, on a busy highway, where people drive 70+ miles per hour and aren't expecting someone to be standing in the median taking selfies. James waited until what he thought was a gap in traffic, hopped the barrier onto the highway median, pulled out his phone, and started setting up his shot. He wanted the perfect angle, cars zooming past on both sides, him looking cool in the middle. What James didn't account for, American highways are not designed for pedestrians. There are no crosswalks on the median because no one is supposed to be there. The cars are going highway speeds because it's, a highway. James was focused on his phone screen, trying to get the right angle. He stepped backward to fit more of the highway in frame, then backward again, then one more step. He backed directly into the path of a car doing 75 miles per hour in the right lane. The driver didn't even have time to brake. James was looking at his phone screen when the impact occurred. It was instantaneous. He didn't see it coming because he was literally facing the wrong direction, watching himself on his phone screen. The driver was traumatized but legally blameless. You can't avoid hitting someone who suddenly appears in your lane on a highway where pedestrians are never supposed to be. Highway Patrol found his phone about 30 feet from the impact site. It was still recording. The last few seconds of video showed James backing up, smiling at the camera, completely oblivious to the car approaching at highway speed. The video was never posted, obviously, but it served as evidence that James had willfully entered a clearly marked restricted area for the purpose of taking a photo. Social media likes are not worth your life. Highways are for cars, not for photo shoots. If you have to cross multiple barriers and ignore several warning signs to get your shot, the shot is not worth it. Also, if your photo idea involves recreating something from another country, maybe consider that traffic laws, road design, and safety standards are different. German Autobahn medians and American highway medians are not the same thing. Story number 5, Gasoline Cocktail. Last, but absolutely not least, we're heading to Raleigh, North Carolina, 2012, for a story that combines mistaken identity with the absolute worst possible follow-up decision. Meet Gary Allen Banning, 43 years old, working in his garage on a hot summer day. Gary had been doing some maintenance work and had filled a mason jar with gasoline to clean some engine parts. He set the jar aside and went back to work. Now, this is already a bad idea, storing gasoline in a food container, but it gets so much worse. After a few hours of work, Gary was thirsty. He reached for what he thought was his jar of iced tea. You see where this is going. Gary took a big swig of gasoline. To his credit, he immediately realized his mistake. Gasoline tastes nothing like iced tea. It's toxic, it's burning his mouth and throat, and Gary spit out what he could and stumbled outside gagging. Now here's where a normal person calls poison control or goes to the hospital. Gasoline ingestion is serious. It can cause chemical pneumonia, damage to internal organs, all sorts of bad outcomes. Gary's first thought after drinking gasoline, I need a cigarette to get this taste out of my mouth. Gary, who just drank gasoline, reached for a cigarette. Let me paint you a picture of what happened next. Gasoline is volatile. It evaporates quickly, especially in North Carolina summer heat. Gary had gasoline on his lips, in his mouth, on his hands from wiping his mouth, and critically, gasoline vapor in his lungs and throat from the initial gulp. He put the cigarette in his mouth, flicked his lighter. The gasoline vapor around his face ignited immediately. But it wasn't just his face. Remember, he'd been drinking it. The vapor in his mouth and throat ignited. He'd wiped his mouth with his hands, spreading gasoline there. His shirt had gasoline splashed on it from when he spit it out. Gary essentially turned himself into a human torch. He screamed and ran for the garden hose, but the damage was already done. Second and third-degree burns across his face, neck, chest, and hands. His throat and esophagus had severe burn damage from the internal ignition of vapor. A neighbor called 911 after hearing the screams and seeing the smoke. Paramedics arrived to find Gary in shock, severely burned, the garage still smoldering. He was airlifted to the burn unit at a major hospital, but the combination of gasoline ingestion and severe burns proved too much. Between the toxic effects of the gasoline he'd swallowed and the catastrophic burns from lighting it on fire, his body couldn't recover. The fire investigators' report is a masterpiece of professional restraint. Subject ingested gasoline, then ignited combustible vapors by lighting cigarette. Death resulted from combination of toxic ingestion and thermal burns. What the investigator probably wanted to write, subject drank poison, then set himself on fire. The cigarette packaging literally says flammable warning. The gasoline container says extremely flammable. Somehow, both warnings were ignored simultaneously. Don't store gasoline in food containers. If you do accidentally ingest gasoline, call poison control immediately. Don't reach for a cigarette. Actually, let's make it simpler. If you've just ingested any flammable substance, lighting a cigarette should not be your next move. Gasoline plus open flame equals fire. This is not complex chemistry. This is why we have warning labels. This is why gasoline pumps have no smoking signs the size of your head.
And there you have it. 5 more people who looked at common sense, laughed in its face, and immediately regretted it. Golden rules that could have saved these lives. 1. Ventilation is not optional. Open your windows. 2. Don't blow up protected wildlife while standing in the fall zone. 3. 6 months of practice does not equal professional skill level. 4. Highways are for cars, not selfies. And 5. If you drink gasoline, do not light a cigarette. Look, some of these stories are darkly funny, but they're also genuinely tragic. These were real people who made fatal errors in judgment. The methane guy died alone in his apartment. The cactus guy destroyed a 200-year-old plant and himself. Mark had his whole life ahead of him. James was just trying to get a cool photo. Gary made one mistake followed by a catastrophic second decision. Learn from their errors. Think before you act. If you have to ignore multiple warning signs to do something, don't do it. And for the love of Darwin, if you accidentally ingest gasoline, do not light a cigarette. Hit that like button if you value ventilation. Subscribe for part 5 and comment with the worst decision you've seen someone almost make. Stay smart, stay safe, and remember, if it sounds like a bad idea, it probably is.